Hello and welcome to this episode of the Buried Rat Podcast, the podcast where I talk about a topic I'm interested in. Today's topic is Alabama House Bill 445, the state government's restrictions on hemp. So I'm going to start by saying this video is largely my opinion, but I will be supporting most of what I say with facts. Also, sorry if the background's loud. I'm going to start with some context and definitions, and we're also going to get into a little bit of science. So bear with me for this little introduction part, and then we'll get into what the bill is. But for context, in 2018, the Agricultural Improvement Act passed, also known as just the 2018 Farm Bill. But basically, it made two categories for marijuana, which I might have to censor, and hemp. Hemp is completely legal. It's totally fine. Anyone can buy or sell it under this bill. And it just stated essentially the plant and any of its derivatives, as long as it had a concentration of no more than 0.3% delta-9 THC on a dry weight basis, would be considered hemp. And so the reason this bill ended up just making all weed legal is because obviously delta-9 THC is the psychoactive component of weed. The thing that they failed to mention is the fact that it's not found in the plant naturally. What is found in the plant naturally, well, at least not in high amounts. What's found in the plant naturally in high amounts is THCA. So THCA, that A stands for acid, there's an extra acid. And when you heat it up by either smoking or heating up and infusing in oils or making cookies or gummies or whatever you're making, any type of extract like that, it requires heat at some point in the process so that the THCA is turned into delta-9 THC. THCA literally does nothing. You could eat straight nuggets of weed and nothing will happen because it doesn't contain the psychoactive compound because it wasn't heated up yet. So when they made this the definition of hemp, they really just legalized all weed, which was purely coincidental. They just didn't do their research, which I think a lot of people appreciated. But I don't know, it's just interesting to me that the government didn't understand the science behind what they were trying to ban and accidentally legalized it. I'm going to get into what this bill actually contains now, and I'm going to kind of summarize just to make this a little easier because they use a lot of legal jargon and whatever in the actual House bill, but it is linked below if you want to read the whole thing. But it essentially makes it really hard for non-medical card holding people to access weed in any type of way. And for the people that do, it's very restricted. The state of Alabama gave control to the Alabama Alcoholic Beverage Control Board for hemp products. So no longer is it just a gray area. The Alcohol Control Board is now in charge of hemp products, which, one, doesn't make any sense because it's the Alcoholic Beverage Control Board. But two, it means that they're allowed to impose whatever restrictions they want. And so far, according to the bill, some of those restrictions include one quote-unquote package of product may not exceed 40 milligrams of THC, and serving sizes must be individually wrapped, first of all, and they may not exceed 10 milligrams. So, for reference, or at least from what I'm aware, the scale is kind of 1 to 100. 1, most people wouldn't feel really anything, and 100, most people would definitely feel everything. So, it's kind of that sort of spectrum, but it also depends on tolerance and just your endocannabinoid system, which I love the science of weed. I'm sure I might actually just link a video to weed science. If not, just Google it. Really interesting. But it's not like alcohol where it's just if you're a bigger, heavier person, you're going to need more. And if you're a smaller, thinner person, you're going to need less. It really just completely depends on the person. Another thing that this bill imposes is that businesses selling to minors could face a bunch of penalties, which that makes sense. The first offense is a $5,000 fine plus a 90-day suspension of the retail license. Second offense is just double, so 180-day suspension and $10,000 fine. And then the third and final offense for a 4-year period is a total revocation of the license and a $20,000 fine. So, yeah, selling to minors is a no-go, which, I mean, makes sense. And there's also a 10% tax on products. I'm gonna start with the positives and kind of why this bill was put into place. This bill was meant to be a compromise over some people in the House who want, complete freedom. Like, you should be able to buy and sell legally like you can in, I don't know, California or Oregon or something, versus the people who think it should be completely illegal and no one should be allowed to touch it with a 10-foot pole. This is somewhere in the middle where you're allowed to buy it, but there are extreme restrictions and you can only buy it in low quantity amounts. Plus, there's a tax on it, and it's being regulated by the Alcoholic Beverage Control Board. So there's a ton of restriction on it, but it's still available rather than being completely unavailable or being completely unrestricted access. Another positive would be the risk for addiction, especially in younger people, with the lowered access for minors. So obviously punishing people who sell to minors makes sense. I think that's kind of like universally agreed upon. But there is a legitimate risk for addiction that I don't think enough people are talking about. Cannabis use disorder is something that's being more explored and more better understood by scientists. If you have the time, look into it, but it definitely is something that a person can be addicted to. It's just not in the same chemical way as, like, I don't know, crack or something. So the negatives, and I will get into even more negatives and kind of back up where my opinion is coming from, but the negatives are that it definitely will shut down businesses. This isn't a question of if, it's a question of when. There was an interview in Birmingham, also the link's in the description, where shop owners are literally like, well, about 90% of what I sell isn't legal anymore, so I'm going to have to find something to fill my shelves with, but like, what do you do? And that makes so much sense. As a business owner, you try to cater to what the market wants, and if that's what the market wants, that's what you cater to. Now that it's not legal anymore, you're kind of SOL as a business owner. Like, there's only so much you can do if it's not legal anymore. And I also think another negative is the lowered potential for medical research. I think if it's more open and available, obviously for I'm thinking UAB especially with their medical center, but if there's less access to weed in the state, there will be less access to research, and there will be less ways of knowing what are the effects of long-term use, what are the effects of underage use, what are the effects of, all these different things, because no one's going to self-report themselves because now it's illegal. So I don't know, it in my head is throwing away a very large sample set. It's throwing away a lot of potential uses that could be seen medically. Thinking about it, weed has been used for the longest time, throughout history, obviously it's a drug, but as a drug in the way that Tylenol is a drug, where you use it to cure certain ailments. And obviously it's been seen to have medicinal benefit. There wouldn't be medical cards otherwise. So in my opinion, I think it's weird that this is how the state's going about it. And now I'm going to go into my more controversial opinion about it, but I'm going to start with some facts. Again, these are linked in the sources below. 2022 was the first year in American history where weed was used more than alcohol. Gen Z is drinking 20% less than previous generations. Only 18 to 20% of drinking age Gen Z, which is ages 21 to 25 years old, consider themselves regular drinkers, according to Statistica. Overall, weed seems to be less dangerous than alcohol. There have been no deaths from weed overdose. There's less hangover symptoms from weed, less physical damage to the body. People aren't as aggressive when they're high when compared to drunk people who do get a lot more physically aggressive. The main drawback with weed is like the potential for abuse. There's also a potential for psychosis, which again needs to be studied, but if people aren't using it, no one can study it, as well as connections to schizophrenia. But those are, again, actively being researched on, and this, in my opinion, will halt a lot of research. And it's also been seen, there's another fact, that alcohol sales have been on the decline or flatlining across the US and Canada in places where weed is available. So, in my opinion, I think that alcohol is kind of on the decline and weed is starting to go up just because I don't want to say it's healthier than alcohol, but it has a lot more positives that people see than the negatives that come with alcohol. Obviously, you don't have to do either, and some people do both. It just really depends on the person. But largely, a lot of the drawbacks people see with alcohol, they don't see with weed. And I mean, also sometimes vice versa. My opinion is that the reason they gave control to the Alcoholic Beverage Control Board is that it's just a way to give the alcohol companies more money. Because if they can completely stomp out weed in the state, then people have no real choice to chase their vice. The only vice that they have access to at this point would be alcohol. So, I feel like there might be some foul play in that, and that they're trying to just shut down the industry. And again, it is a booming industry. Well, I guess was a booming industry. It propped a lot of places up, a lot of businesses up, and it opened the door for conversation. It opened the door for medicinal use. Some people self-medicate with weed that, again, you can just buy at a gas station. So who is really to blame for this? And I actually have the answer. So shout out to Michael Andrew Andy Witt, the Republican representative for the Alabama House of Representatives. His district includes parts of Madison and Limestone counties, by the way, in North Alabama. So for the Alabama residents who would like to contact him, especially if you're within his district, his contacts are linked in the description below. It's on fastdemocracy.com. But yeah, he's the one who sponsored this bill. So what my thoughts are is that there's potentially some foul play just trying to make up for the losses that alcohol companies are seeing by prohibiting weed sales, because they kind of are at odds with each other a lot of the time. Again, who's to say I'm right? Not necessarily, but that's what it's sounding like to me. So yeah, in conclusion, this bill severely limits people's access to weed in the state of Alabama. And I feel like similar bills could be enacted in other states. So if you're in another state or in another country even, I just want to make y'all aware that this is something that's happening. And I think it's weird that it's happening, especially with the potential for medical use and research. But I think corporate greed might be blocking that. Just, again, personal opinion, but I feel like corporate greed might be blocking that. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please remember to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. I do really want to hear what everyone else's thoughts are, because I don't know if I'm right. I don't know if this is really what's going on. If anyone finds any more statistics or anything else interesting, please let me know. But yeah, this is what I have to say about this bill. So weird. I don't really think it should have passed. If it's federally legal, it should just kind of stay that way, even if the market is kind of a gray area. I agree with regulations, and that's part of the bill, is that it requires more regulation, but I don't think this degree of regulation is the right way to go about it. Anyway, yeah, that's all. Thanks for watching. Bye.